At the peak of his career, Burt Lancaster was the perfect Hollywood leading man. He had a smile that could win over anyone and a physique he built in the circus. He was an icon of pure masculine charisma. He was the tough guy with a soft heart, an Oscar winner, and a box office giant. But behind the camera flashes and the on-set friendships, a very different story was being written. A persistent Hollywood rumor claims that in his final years, as he neared 80, Lancaster wrote a secret memoir. And this wasn't a book of fond memories. It was a burn book. A list of grudges to settle. A final testament allegedly naming the 8 people in Hollywood he truly despised. Today, we're investigating that incredible rumor. What if it's true? Who were these Hollywood legends that got on Burt Lancaster's bad side? And what shocking feuds have been kept under wraps for decades? We'll dig into the names on this supposed list, separating the hard facts from the Hollywood gossip. Join us for a story that Hollywood never wanted told. Before we get to the names, you have to understand the man himself. Burt Stephen Lancaster wasn't your typical movie star. He didn't get discovered at a soda shop. He grew up on the tough streets of East Harlem, and got his start in show business as a circus acrobat, performing death-defying stunts with his childhood friend, Nick Cravat. This background gave him a unique mix of grit, discipline, and a powerful physical presence that set him apart in Hollywood. When he finally landed in Hollywood after serving in World War II, he was an instant star. His first film, The Killers, made him famous overnight. But Lancaster was never happy just being an actor reading lines. He was intensely smart and ambitious. By 1948, only 2 years after his debut, he had already started his own production company, giving him unheard-of control over his career. This was a man who played by his own rules. Friends and biographers describe him as a complex and often contradictory person. He was fiercely loyal to his oldest friends, keeping people from his childhood on his payroll for their entire lives. He was a passionate supporter of liberal politics, speaking up for civil rights and against the Vietnam War. But there was another side to him. He could be difficult, demanding, and had a legendary temper. One director famously called him the most charming dictator in Hollywood. He demanded absolute loyalty and was known to fly into rages on set. It's this complicated, combative personality that makes the legend of a secret hate list so believable. He was a man who felt everything deeply, whether it was passion for a cause or a grudge against a colleague. And according to the legend, that grudge was saved for a special few. The first name on Lancaster's supposed list isn't a Hollywood star, but a man who cast a long, dark shadow over the entire country, FBI. Director J. Edgar Hoover. The rumored memoir allegedly details a deep contempt for Hoover, not because of a fight on a movie set, but because of a clash of ideals that showed 2 very different sides of America. To get this, you have to understand Lancaster's politics. He was a proud liberal, a man who condemned the blacklisting practices of the House Un-American Activities Committee, WAC, and actively supported the civil rights movement. He used his fame to fight for progressive causes. Hoover, on the other hand, built a surveillance state that saw that kind of activism as deeply suspicious. The FBI under Hoover investigated Lancaster for supposed communist ties and for his civil rights work. The legend says that in 1957, Lancaster asked for a tour of the FBI headquarters and a meeting with Hoover, but the director personally denied the request, citing Lancaster's subversive friends. The rumor of the memoir suggests Lancaster saw Hoover as the face of political persecution, a tyrant who used fear to crush dissent. While there's no proof of a direct confrontation between them, the reason for the bad blood is clear. Lancaster was a subject of FBI surveillance, and his vocal activism certainly put him on the radar of powerful government figures. The hatred described in the rumored memoir isn't about a stolen scene, it's about a battle for the soul of a nation. While we can't prove the words in a book that may not exist, history shows that if Lancaster did have an enemies list, J. Edgar Hoover would have been right at the top. Next on the supposed list is a name that might surprise you, Mickey Rooney. To the world, Rooney was America's eternal boy next door, a ball of energy who starred in the wholesome Andy Hardy films. But the legend of Lancaster's memoir suggests something much darker. The rumor claims that Lancaster saw Rooney's cheerful personality as an act, hiding a cruel and manipulative person underneath. The supposed origin of this feud is a total mystery. Some stories claim it started during World War II when both stars were entertaining troops. However, there's no credible evidence they ever served together or had any meaningful contact during that time. The story of a wartime falling out seems to be completely made up. So, where did this rumor come from? It might just be about how different they were. Rooney was a product of the old studio system, a child star known for a squeaky clean image. Lancaster was the new wave, independent, intense, and artistically ambitious, who built his career outside the studio machine. Their styles couldn't have been more opposite. Their love lives also briefly crossed paths through one of Hollywood's brightest stars, Ava Gardner. Gardner's big break was opposite Lancaster in The Killers, and their chemistry was undeniable. Just a few years earlier, Gardner had been briefly and unhappily married to Mickey Rooney. Did Lancaster, who worked with Gardner as she became a huge star, hear stories about her time with Rooney? Did he develop a second-hand dislike for the man? It's all speculation. There is no documented feud, no recorded fight. This entry on the list seems to be built on nothing more than Hollywood gossip. The sixth name supposedly on Lancaster's list is one of the most respected actors ever, Spencer Tracy. This alleged feud wasn't about bad behavior off-screen, but about their very different approaches to acting. The rumor claims that Lancaster, the ex-acrobat who poured intense physical work into his roles, looked down on Tracy's famously understated, effortless style, seeing it as just plain lazy. Lancaster believed in intense preparation, in building a character from the outside in. His body was his main instrument. Tracy, however, was the master of doing less, of showing a universe of emotion with a simple look. His famous advice was to know your lines and don't bump into the furniture. These two opposite philosophies came face to face in 1961 when they starred in the courtroom drama, Judgment at Nuremberg. In the film, Lancaster played a guilt-ridden Nazi judge, while Tracy played the American judge deciding his fate. The movie was a huge hit, earning 11 Oscar nominations. On screen, their scenes were electric. Behind the scenes, the story is a lot more complicated than a simple feud. While their methods were totally different, most accounts point to a deep professional respect. Lancaster more than held his own, delivering a performance that critics loved. The gossip might tell a story of Lancaster mocking Tracy's style, but the reality seems to be one of mutual admiration between two masters. The hatred mentioned in the alleged memoir seems to be a dramatic invention, creating a conflict out of a simple difference in artistic technique. We are now getting to the very heart of this alleged list, where the names get bigger and the rumored scandals get even more shocking. These are the icons who defined an era. Before we reveal the next name on Lancaster's supposed hit list, if you're fascinated by the secret dramas of old Hollywood, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, and we want to hear from you. Based on what you know, who do you think was Burt Lancaster's biggest rival? Let us know in the comments below. Now, let's get back to the countdown. This might be the most shocking name on the supposed list, James "Jimmy" Stewart. An icon of American decency, famous for his "aw shucks" personality and roles in films like It's a Wonderful Life, Stewart was the definition of integrity. According to the legend of the secret memoir, though, Lancaster thought this whole persona was a complete fraud. The rumor is that he privately mocked Stewart, seeing his friendly, everyman act as phony and calculated. This claim is especially scandalous because, publicly, the two men seemed to respect each other. In 1983, it was Burt Lancaster himself who stood on stage at the Kennedy Center Honors to introduce and pay tribute to Jimmy Stewart. This public display of admiration is a direct contradiction to the private contempt described in the rumored memoir. So was it all an act? Was Lancaster just playing a part, honoring a man he secretly couldn't stand. When you look at the facts, there's no evidence to support this story of a hidden feud. What we find are two men who were pillars of Hollywood, but very different ones. Stewart was the all-American hero. Lancaster was the rugged, complex anti-hero. They were active at the same time, but they weren't really rivals, since they rarely went after the same types of roles. The rumor of Lancaster's disdain may have come from their different approaches to the business. Stewart was mostly a company man who did well within the studio system. Lancaster, as we know, was a rebel who started his own company to gain independence. It's possible Lancaster saw Stewart's more traditional career as less artistically bold. Ultimately, the story of Lancaster's hatred for Stewart seems to be just that, a story. There are no other accounts, no documented fights, only a sensational rumor trying to tarnish the image of one of America's most beloved actors. The next two names on the alleged list are two of the most iconic women of the 20th century, Marilyn Monroe and Elizabeth Taylor. According to the whispered legend, Lancaster lumped them together in his contempt, but for slightly different reasons. He supposedly scoffed at Marilyn Monroe for what he saw as a total lack of professionalism, believing her infamous on-set troubles were a disgrace to the craft. For Elizabeth Taylor, the alleged disdain was aimed at her scandal-filled personal life, which Lancaster supposedly felt turned Hollywood into a circus, overshadowing the actual work. He allegedly called her a storm wrapped in silk. Let's break this down. It's well known that Burt Lancaster was a complete professional. He came from the circus, where a lack of discipline could get you killed. He expected everyone to be on time, prepared, and dedicated. So, it's easy to believe he wouldn't have been a fan of Marilyn Monroe's notorious on-set behavior, which often included being chronically late and struggling with her lines. While they never worked together, their reputations for professionalism were worlds apart. As for Elizabeth Taylor, her life was lived in the headlines. Her 8 marriages, especially her scandalous affair with Richard Burton, created a media frenzy like nothing Hollywood had ever seen. The legend claims Lancaster saw this as a deliberate strategy, that Taylor used her fame and beauty to control productions and throw tantrums, but is any of this true? While Lancaster and Taylor moved in the same elite Hollywood circles, there's absolutely no credible evidence of any personal feud. They were never co-stars. It's very likely that Lancaster, a man who was deeply serious about his work, had his own private opinions about his peers. But the jump from a private opinion to a documented, vicious hatred seems to be pure fiction. The secret memoir appears to have taken Lancaster's known professionalism and spun a juicy, but made-up, story of feuds with two of Hollywood's most legendary actresses. Coming in at number 2 on this explosive, unverified list is Natalie Wood. The supposed reason for Lancaster's animosity toward the beloved actress is very specific. The story goes that Lancaster deeply resented Wood for starring in the 1979 TV miniseries remake of his classic 1953 film, From Here to Eternity. From Here to Eternity was a massive film for Burt Lancaster. His role as First Sergeant Milton Warden got him his first Oscar nomination and created one of the most iconic scenes in movie history, his passionate kiss with Deborah Kerr in the Hawaiian surf. The film won 8 Oscars, including Best Picture. For Lancaster, this wasn't just another movie, it was a cornerstone of his legacy. 26 years later, a big-budget TV remake was made, with Natalie Wood playing the part originally played by Deborah Kerr. The rumor claims Lancaster saw this as a personal insult, a cheapening of a cinematic masterpiece. The idea of his signature film being repackaged for TV supposedly infuriated him, but once again, there is just no proof to back this up. In the late 70s and 80s, TV remakes of classic films were common, and while the original actors might not have been thrilled, it rarely led to a bitter, personal feud. There are no reports from the time, or any mentions in biographies of either star, that suggest any bad blood between Lancaster and Wood. This rumor seems to be another case of creating drama out of thin air, playing on the idea of an aging star protecting his legacy. But without any facts, it's just another ghost from the Hollywood rumor mill. We've finally reached the #1 name on Burt Lancaster's alleged hate list. And this time, the rumor is rooted in a very real, very public, and very explosive truth. The name is Kirk Douglas. The legend of the secret memoir claims it was filled with pages detailing Lancaster's deep resentment for the man who was both his most frequent co-star and his greatest rival. He supposedly described Douglas as a ruthless schemer who would step on anyone to get ahead. Unlike the other names on this list, the feud between Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas is the stuff of Hollywood legend. They made 7 films together, including classics like Gunfight at the OK Corral and 7 Days in May. On screen, their chemistry was electric. Off-screen, that electricity often sparked into open conflict. Their personalities were destined to clash. Both were ambitious and driven, but in completely different ways. Lancaster was known for being a more easygoing professional, while Douglas had a reputation for being intense, difficult, and fiercely competitive. This friction created a rivalry that was both personal and professional. The stories are legendary. Lancaster loved to make jokes at Douglas's expense, often targeting his insecurities. When introducing Douglas at events, he was known to say, "Kirk would be the first to admit he is a difficult person. I would be the second." For his part, Douglas admitted in his own autobiography that the tension was real. Lancaster reportedly felt that Douglas was an egomaniac who always tried to upstage him. In a rare 1976 interview, when asked about Douglas, Lancaster paused and said, "Some people bring out the best in each other, we brought out the beast." And yet, their relationship was more complicated than just hate. It was a classic, frenemy dynamic. Despite the fights and public jabs, there was a deep respect between them. They were two sides of the same coin, two titans who pushed each other to be better. In his later years, after Lancaster's death in 1994, Kirk Douglas's tone softened. In a 2017 interview, he confessed, "We fought a lot, and I miss him a lot." It was an admission that their legendary feud, for all its bitterness, was also the foundation of one of Hollywood's most unforgettable partnerships. While the secret memoir may be fiction, the animosity between Lancaster and Douglas was very, very real. So, what should we make of this legend? This story of an old actor, looking back on his life and listing his enemies in a secret book. After digging into the 8 names, a clear pattern emerges. The story of the secret memoir appears to be a brilliant piece of Hollywood myth-making that has caught fire online. There is no credible, verifiable evidence that this book ever existed. Instead, the legend seems to be stitched together from different threads. It takes the one, well-documented, and genuinely bitter rivalry of Lancaster's life, his feud with Kirk Douglas, and uses it as the foundation. It then builds on that with speculation, taking Lancaster's known personality, his liberal politics, his intense professionalism, his famous temper, and inventing feuds with people like J. Edgar Hoover and Marilyn Monroe. The rest of the names seem to be pure guesswork. The story works because it taps into a deeper truth about Hollywood. It's a world built on image and carefully crafted personas. We're fascinated by the idea that behind the charming smiles lies a darker world of jealousy and betrayal. The legend of Burt Lancaster's secret list feeds that fascination. In the end, Burt Lancaster's true legacy isn't a list of people he hated. His legacy is his work, the incredible career of a man who went from circus acrobat to Oscar-winning actor, a man who changed the rules of the game. He was a complex, difficult, and brilliant person who left a permanent mark on movie history. The myth of his secret memoir is just that, a myth. A compelling story that reminds us that in Hollywood, sometimes the legends are more powerful than